فرقا ساميا معصوما اللهم لا تجعل فينا شقيا ولا محروما ولا مطرودا ولا معذبا بنا برحمتك يا عزيز غفار. ثم أما بعد. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this gathering, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant the best for all of us in this life and hereafter. I'd like to remind you, as yesterday, to renew our intentions, and we are here in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order that to gain that knowledge that will help us to serve our deen. So the intention is matter, and also we put in our intention that as we are in the masjid, so we use this time to wait for salah. So our intention, to wait for salah. So all these hours, count as if we are in salah. فَالْمُؤْمِنُ فِي صَلَاةٍ مَنْ تَدَرَ الصَّلَاةِ. You are be count as if you are praying, as long as you are waiting for the prayer. So put that in your heart, billahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is time, from akhirah, nothing from dunya, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala write that in all our record of hasanat. Ameen. So today will be more a practical point where we're gonna go around how you approach people and how you address the main topic, and as we started yesterday of the go rob, today we'll continue other things, how to talk about prophethood and about all other subjects that are related. So inshallah it will be interesting, and will be both sides, not only one side. We're gonna have kind of interaction billahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. And please do not hesitate to ask your questions. However, we're gonna have at the end the question and answer session. And before we conclude, we will test your information, how you grab, the main point in this, course. And we have set of questions. We're gonna come and study it all together, and just as to refresh your your memory, and at the same time to make sure that we are all at the same page. The aim for this, that we create a group for Dawah. That's the aim of that. That's why we hope all of you that after this you will register in our team. So we're gonna do a lot of activities, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So practice what what you learn, because it's very important, inshallah, you put that in actual field. So we don't want just to learn, and then these valuable information or these kind of training will go with no benefit. Inshallah, we want you to be agent of goodness and to be among the ambassadors of Islam. So inshallah, that's the second step. This course, it's the first stone for our programs. We're gonna have many other programs, expecting that a minimum will be one main program in every 2 months. We might even do more than this. It depends on your interaction and yourself, if you are ready or not. But I guess, as I heard from many of you, that you wish to be part of all of these activities. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you.
Ameen.
Did you came with something about Islam as an acronym? It's not an acronym, it's a name, but you came with something? Anyone want to share something with us as a fun practice? Do you remember when I said Islam, ideal system leading all mankind? You have something in mind like this? Yes, brother. Islam, spread. Oh, mashallah. Yeah, say it. What's your name?
Islam spreads love and mercy.
Allahu Akbar. That's very good.
Yeah, mashallah. So ISLM, Islam spread love and mercy. Thank you. Mashallah. Any other one? Any brother or sister came with something alike? Think of it. Think of it. So that would reflect your understanding about Islam as well. It's a fun practice, just to make you think of something, because the deep thought about something, you have attachment to it. So that's when you build in that into you. So it's not only just attending lecture and then there's no any reflection. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant the best for all of us. Ameen. Brother Ali will, inshallah, continue with you the other part. And we're going to have a break. And then we're going to have another break for Dhuhr and lunch. And the program will be the same. At the end, inshallah, each one of you will be handle the completion certificate or participation certificate, of this, course.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Yeah, microphone is on you.
Oh, you have yours. And Muhammad. Oh, the last one is Allah and Muhammad. So I spread love of Allah and Muhammad. MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, very good.
Yeah, Islam, the A, and it's Allah and Muhammad. Thank you, MashaAllah.
Okay, let's begin. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. So, we covered a lot of ground yesterday, alhamdulillah. And yesterday was lots of spirituality, lots of about reflections and why the dawah is important. So some of the topics we covered, why we should give dawah. What is dawah? We discussed that. And then we discussed who's responsible for giving dawah. Then we discussed why we should give dawah. And then after that, we went through the fiqh of dawah, right? The caller, the called, and the called. So we went through the fiqh of dawah, and then, alhamdulillah, we talked about the go-wrap approach. Sorry, we talked about the dawah downfall, why the dawah fails, right? We talked about the branches, the discussions, and people get into useless arguments. We talked about all of these things, and then we discussed the go-wrap approach. What is the go-wrap approach? And we explained that there's many ways to give dawah. This is one of the ways to give dawah. As long as you're speaking about Allah, you're speaking about He's one, He deserves to be worshipped. He sent us guidance. The Quran is from Allah. The Prophet ﷺ is a prophet of God. This is somewhat of a good dawah. And then we discuss the goal wrap. And then we talk about initiation and premise, like how to initiate a conversation. And then we explain how psychologically, if somebody's coming to you with yes or no questions, how to deal with them. And then we discussed if someone comes to you and he says, Muslims want to kill babies, how we reject that and we say, you have a really misunderstanding of Islam. However, do you have a few minutes I can explain what is the right concept of Islam, why Islam does not teach violence, Islam does not teach to take the law in your own hand. Islam is a religion of justice and peace by having good relationship with creation and the Creator. And then we discussed God's existence, to how to explain there's a Creator or a first cause of some sort. So that was really where we kind of left off. So that was the parts that were a bit spiritual and a little bit of some role plays and some activities. Today we'll have a lot more time to actually go through how to give dawah, but we need to learn a few more tool sets. So the way I explain this is, imagine you have a tool bag of different tools. Like you have a tool of a hammer, screwdriver, drill, nail machine, whatever. You have a whole bunch of tools. Now the thing is, when you're about to do the job, you don't use the same tool for every job, right? You don't use a hammer for every job. Or if you're a dentist, you have different sets of things that you use. You don't use that tool for every single thing. Obviously, you have different tools. In the same way, what we're trying to here, is to educate you or show you that there are different tools that people would come with, that different questions they would come with. Depending on the question they come with, we use that tool. However, that being said, we want to make sure that we don't go, we go back to the main premise, which is go-wrap, God, oneness, revelation, and prophethood. We want to make sure we're calling to Tawheed. We're not calling to community, culture. We're not calling to our own hawa. what I think is right and wrong. So this is really important because this is when people get confused in the dawah, because we start discussing these branch discussions. So even what happens in a healthy dawah conversation, the person will take you out of that conversation and take you somewhere else. So they'll start talking about politics. They'll start talking about hijab or beard or whatever that discussion would lead to. So you want to bring it back to God, oneness, revelation, and prophethood. That's really the goal. So, just going to my notes here just to make sure. So now, this part we're talking about how to explain the Creator's one. So that's really now we've moved to that stage after explaining. So yesterday we said your job isn't to explain that there's a God, that He's listening to your du'as and He's telling you. Because one of the reason why I'm explaining this, because what happened, I was speaking to this one person and he's like, okay, I kind of understand there's an energy, there's a force, or there's something, that all of this didn't come from nothing. But what I don't understand, this is what the person was telling me. He goes, what I don't understand is from that you jump to prayers and and ibadats and sadaqah and all of these things. And then I had to reflect that we as Muslims, it's not just we believe in God only. We believe in Allah. We believe that Allah has guided us through revelation, wahi, that has come through the Prophet ﷺ, right? And how we understand this wahi revelation is through how the Prophet ﷺ explained this wahi. So all of the ibadats, all of the things we do are based on what the Prophet ﷺ taught. So when we're talking about God to them, or they're not understanding these because first they don't have the right lenses to see the world. Second of all, that doesn't make sense to them. Because they'll say, what, God spoke to you directly? So this is why we need to build in that, explain to them and not to leave them. Here's another thing I want to just share with you. If we're speaking to people and we talk about God, we need to make sure that we link that to Islam. What do we mean by that? If you leave them, okay, there's a creator, right? There's some energy, some force, and all of this didn't come from nothing, and you just leave them there. Naturally, what they will do is they'll start searching for stuff. Where do I go now? Where do I find the truth? So whatever usually people, if they're Christian, they'll go back to Christianity. So what would happen is, I was speaking to some people in my close vicinity back in the days, and I realized the more I started to learn about Islam, and I would talk about God, what they would do is they would like, okay, I'll just start going back to church. So it's counter dawah, right? Because you're thinking you're giving them dawah, bringing them closer to God, but they're just going back to the wrong God, right? So the thing is, we need to explain all of these other elements: God, oneness, revelation, and prophethood, right? So that's the point that's really important. So today we're discussing about oneness, right? So when we're talking about oneness, now I always say this, and I don't know how I get trapped in this long discussion about oneness, because I know people have lots of questions, and I think that's what really kind of takes it a little longer than it should. But here's what I want to share with you, my humble advice. No one is going to content oneness because it's already innate. It's already in the fitrah. There has to be a first cause, so something in the beginning. That's something inside the people already. The only time people debate or argue this point is if they're taught that there's multiple gods. You guys understand the point here? So let's say if you come from a Hindu background and you're like, okay, well, no, God manifests in different ways, comes down in different times, yeah? So that's your worldview. Or let's say you are Majusi, right? Where they have the God, the fire worshippers. God is the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer. So there's a concept of three gods, right? So what I'm saying is, if they haven't been taught that, it's not something they're going to dive into. So you're not going to, generally in the dawah, you're not going to go into this much detail when it comes to this part. However, if the conversation does come, this is what Islam stands at the forefront of it. What does it mean? The reason people become Muslim, One of the biggest reason, I'm not saying the reason, one of the reason is that concept of God in Islam is very simple. It's very easy for anyone to understand. You could be a 5-year-old kid, or you could be a 50-year-old person, or a 70, 80. You could be just a simple layman farmer, or you could be a rocket scientist, and it will make sense to everyone. That's the point, right? And that's one of the things that is unique to only Islam. Why? Because we know we have a concept of laysa kamithlihi shay. What does that mean? There's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yesterday I explained Islam is built upon principles. Okay? So what do we mean by this? So yesterday I was invited to the Sheikh's house and we were discussing. One of the things we're we're going to work on inshallah, is to not just create du'as. It's easy to create du'a. Like, I went to Halifax, I think there's 40 or 50 du'ats that are ready to be trained and to give dawah. There are people in Mississauga, there's people in Hamilton, there's people in Ottawa. So creating du'ats is very simple. It's very easy. You go, you give a lecture, you give a talk, you teach them what dawah is, and all of a sudden they get enrolled. And all of a sudden they're good. But what we want to do is we want to take these da'is to the next level, which is getting them to understand Islam through our proper teachings of Islam, right? Which is Aqidah, which is Tawheed, which is understanding how our pious predecessors understood Islam. So we're going to try to put something together as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permits it. Then we'll be doing a regular class with you guys, even if it's once a week, even if it's 1 hour a week. It does not have to be 30 hours a week you have to study Islam. Wallahi, if you just studied 1 hour a week, like academically you studied an hour, within a year, your whole life will change. This is a fact. I'm not making this up like, oh yeah, Ali's just making this claim. Because I've seen in my own life, the best da'is that we have, in iERA are all talib ilm. All of them are students of knowledge. The people, they're not just listening to lectures and learning about Islam. These are people that are actually understanding the deen from the ground up, inshallah. Okay? So, I didn't say this yesterday. I want to say this now. How many people here from a university and college? Well, half or maybe more than half. Yesterday I didn't explain this. I wanted to start with these two premises today. I was listening to a really good da'i and a student of knowledge. His name is Kamal Makki. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a very good da'i in the US, and he is a student of knowledge as well. So I was listening to one of his lectures at night. Just sometimes I try to learn from other people's wisdom and knowledge. And he gave a really good example. And the example that he gave, when you teach the youth, the shabab, if you teach them what is the maqasid of Sharia, right? Because what's happening in the Muslim community, okay? What's happening in the Muslim community that we see some organizations and even masajids, they feel like that they just need to create events. And that's what's going to move the ummah forward. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with creating events and getting together and halakas and going camping and fishing. This is great. But the point of those things is to connect you back to the masjid. You guys understand? What we're trying to achieve is to connect people outside of the masjid to go to these camping and fishing and hiking. But the point is, that's not the goal. The goal isn't to do camping. The goal isn't to go fishing. The goal is that the person becomes a practicing Muslim and he loves the deen and he's connected back to the masjid. That's the goal. So here's what I'm saying. So I was listening to the Sheikh and he was like, look, I'm traveling all over the world and I'm seeing that people are doing these kind of activities with the youth, but they're not connected to the masjid. They're not connected to the community. And that's what we want. Why? Because our future are you guys, the youth. They're going to lead the ummah forward. We're going to be gone in another 10, 15 years. Allah knows if we're even going to be here that long. But, so what he was saying, that one of the things that in the Muslim community what we do is we always tell the kids, do this, don't do that. So we always talk about halal and haram. Yes? Everybody in Muslim, we ask, What is it to be a Muslim? What's the answer we get? We don't drink, we don't eat pork, right? This is usually the answers we get from people. Why? Because this is what we feel Islam is, do's and don'ts, right? Majority of the people, that's all they understand Islam. Oh, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. But what the Sheikh was saying was really interesting. I never thought about it myself. What he said was, what's the beauty of it is, if you teach a youth, a shabab, what the maqasid of Sharia is, what is the reason, what does Allah and His Messenger want from us? If you teach him the why question, he will answer the how question himself. You guys understand this point? So like, if I tell you this clicker is made from plastic, I can tell you how it's manufactured. But if I tell you why this clicker was created, it's far more profound. They're like, oh, the reason is because we want to help people to, use the laptop. I'm just giving an example. So teaching the youth, the shabab, right? The reason what Allah wants from you, you can make decisions in a better way. So let me give you an example. I think I would like you to write this down if you're not writing it already. So what is the maqasid of Sharia? What it means, maqasid, the word comes from maqsad, means the reason what God wants from us, Allah, right? And His Messenger has taught us. So number one in maqasid of Sharia is to protect the deen. So this is the highest thing that Islam is concerned with. Number one is to protect your deen. Number two is what? Is to protect life. Human life in general. Yes? You writing that? You guys understand it? I'm going to ask you later. Number one is to protect your deen. Number two is to protect life. Number three is to protect intellect. To protect your intellect. And number four is to protect your lineage. And number five is to protect your mal, your rizq, your money, your wealth. The reason is this. Here's what I'm explaining. Number one, we need to understand these maqasid of Sharia, of these five things. So number one, starting from top, is the deen. Number two is life. Number three is intellect. Number four is your lineage. And number five is your rizq. How now this implements or manifests in your life? Number one, I had a sister that came up to me and she said, my daughter left Islam. So I said, okay. And I said, why did this happen? She says, well, she was hanging around with people that were non-Muslims for many, many years. So I said, okay, well, why was she hanging around with people that are non-Muslims? She goes, we were living in a city out in the East Coast where there were no Muslims. So I said, well, why were you living there? She said, well, because I got offered a job that pays really well. So now let me ask you a question. You go in the maqasid of Sharia, what did she put priority to number one? Number five. So her tartib, her order was at the last. Her thought should be, I want to protect my deen. Now you can expand that out to anything. Whether, somebody's being persecuted in Syria and they want to protect their life. Or number three, maybe you put yourself in a situation with people that are trying to confuse you intellectually when it comes to the deen. So now you have to protect your intellect. So you see how maqasid of Sharia just puts everything in place. So this is number one I wanted to give to the shabab, the youth. And even as us elders, we need to understand that as for ourselves. But many of you, mashallah, may be qualified that you know this. So, does that make sense? Now when someone says, you can't go on a prom night with your school, what part of the maqasid of Sharia it's challenging? The deen, right? So you understand. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not even go near fornication. Right? So you now start to realize where everything kind of falls in. Okay? This is for you guys to just, a little small, not part of the class, is to just add some value to the youth. So when you guys ask me questions later on, you will know how to answer them before you ask them. Yes, sister? For this part? Yeah. This is technically not part of the class. It's just an extra bonus. Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course. And there's nothing wrong with that because so maybe their life is not being saved, right? Remember, the second part is your life. So if you're like living in a country that's war-torn, there's no justice, so now you understand that you didn't just come here for money. So now, the sister said that, okay, well, if we've come here, most of us come here for money, how do we answer that question? So it's very simple. My parents didn't come here for no other reason than to make money. May Allah forgive them and their shortcomings, and may Allah give them Jannah Firdaus. Both of them passed away. But here's the point. Remember we talked about intention. The Prophet ﷺ said, every action is based on your intention. If your intention is correct, the action will be correct. Now the thing is, the scholars say that for you to live in the West or live in a Dar al-Kufr, there are conditions for living here. So some of the conditions are what? Number one, if you're living here, let's say you come here for, one of them could be education. But that education has to serve the Muslim Ummah. So it's not like I come here to become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and it's just helping me to grow financially. Or only my family. It has to help the Muslim Ummah. Number two, if you're going to do a business, that business should benefit the Muslim Ummah in some way. Number three, if you're here for, let's say you're sick back home and there's no medical need, that medical need, you come here, you get your medical need, you go back. Number four, if you're going through some kind of war tour, you need to protect your life, you can do hijrah, right? But when it's safe, you go back. This is what the ulama say, that's not from me. And number five is to give dawah. And so all of these other conditions actually fall apart eventually because there's only so much money you can make and there's only so much studies you can do. So really, if you're here, like myself and my wife, we talk about this, right? If you're not giving dawah, then what are we here for? So you change your intention that my whole purpose to live in the West is to give dawah, right? And dawah doesn't have to be standing on the corners giving out flyers, is showing being the best Muslim, teaching people about Islam, whatever way you can be part of the dawah. That's all. Hope that makes sense, inshallah. That answer your question, sister? Excellent. Excellent. So it gave you the answer. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So moving back to the class. So, like I said, there will be no major challenges that will arise when it comes to oneness. However, that doesn't mean Islam does not have the answers to explain when we say Allah is one. Okay? So now, without me giving you the answers, I would like to hear from you how we would explain in a live dawah conversation that the Creator is one. How would we do that? With a show of hands. Yes, brother. Can I have the mic, Sheikh? Anybody who's got the mic? The brothers can just hand this. Can you just hand people? Whoever just asks. If you could just standing for a bit until... So how would you explain one? God is one.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The universe, the world works in such synchrony. All the physical laws, all the biological processes, like all these living things that we see around us, even if you look inside your own body, everything works in harmony. If there were multiple gods, each with their own idea of how things should run, how would you get this sort of order?
Excellent.
At the end of the day, it's not possible. There should only be one big one at the end who's making all of the decisions.
Excellent. We have a really good book at iERA. It's called The Eternal Challenge. Inshallah, once we're set up, we'll have a team. At some point, we should do a book club. Then we should go through these books. Like The Eternal Challenge basically explains, it's written by Abu Zakaria, amazing brother from UK. And he's wrote a lot of publications for iERA. And the Eternal Challenge basically talks about why the Quran is from Allah. So a lot of things that we'll cover today, that will be in that book. And inshallah, I would encourage all of you to email us, and I can send it out to you. Read the PDF. If not, you can download it, or I can send you hard copies as well, if I have enough, inshallah. But here's the thing, why I'm bringing that up. In there, it talks about the Fibonacci patterns. The Fibonacci patterns is that there is a pattern in the creation that is synergy throughout the creation. Like for example, the black hole has a certain shape. You'll find that in like oysters, or you'll find that in the sea, in the ocean. So there's a patterns, like on flowers, you'll find a similar pattern. So it's like looking at like 30 different paintings. If you know that the painting's made with the same painter, you'll have understanding that somewhat it has some kind of pattern from the same painter. So the idea here is to explain that in that Fibonacci quote, that explains that if you look at the creation, it will show you there's only has to be one creator, one designer. That's kind of the brother was explaining, inshallah. Just to add more data to that, inshallah. If you have any questions about the book, I'll let you know later. Yeah? Anybody else? How would we explain God is one? Yes, sister. If one of the sisters, if you can just take that from me, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that there has to be the one highest power to create everything.
Okay.
So if there was more than one God, then paradoxically neither of them would be God. There would have to be one power that's even higher than both of them to create both of those, because there has to be one highest power.
Excellent. Do you guys understand that point? Please raise your hand if you didn't understand what she's saying. So what she's saying, if there was multiple gods, right, and they were fighting with one another, if they fight with one another, if one wins, then knowing that the all-powerful God would be the one who won. If neither of them win, then neither of them are a God. Right? Because they both can't make a decision. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, Al-Khallaq, the creator, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-wise. He can make that claim, that last call. Yeah? Anybody else like to add? How do we explain? Oh, yes? Can you give that mic to? The youth of tomorrow. They're going to be leading the torch. Go ahead, brother.
So
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
you could use scientific basis of the Quran, like specific phenomena that have been explained in the Quran, to prove that were recently discovered, to prove that a God that knew what was going to happen, and it happened. This will prove that it's from Allah, and this could, if they're going by logic, it'll probably convince them somewhat at least.
Excellent. Okay. So, yeah, sorry, I just want to run the mics back and forth. We only have one, right, Sheikh? I don't think we have another mic. Brother? We only have one. So if you could just go ahead. Sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry? Yes, excellent. Yes. So the sister is saying, can we use Surah Al-Ikhlas? Now, I'm sure many of you already know that the translation in your language about Surah Al-Ikhlas. Many people have become Muslim because of Surah Al-Ikhlas, because that's a true definition who God is, right? So, Qul huwallahu ahad. So when we say Qul huwallahu ahad, what does that mean, Qul huwallahu ahad? What is ahad? Is it one? Yes, because it's not one, it's uniquely one. Because like I'm saying, here's one clicker, but there's many one clickers. Right? So we want to say, Qul huwallahu ahad. Allah is uniquely one. Right? Allahus samad. What is samad? He's the sustainer, the self-sufficient. Al-ghani, independent. Right? So, Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahus samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Yes. And look at that. That goes right against Christianity. Right? Goes directly after Christianity. Allah was not created, like He did not beget anything and nothing beget Allah. So, وَلَمْ يَكُلْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. What does that mean? There's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever your conceptual mind can come up with Allah, that is not God. So that is a very powerful surah to give to people. But here's what I want to start with, yeah? To keep things very simple in the beginning. I know we have a doctor here. Do we have any dentist here? Any dentist? Okay. Usually when you go to a dentist, what does he do? He looks at your teeth and looks for cavities, and then he says, I think it needs a little bit of cleaning, it needs this. And then he takes some x-rays and he finds, oh, you know what, I think there's some decay. We need to go a little bit deeper. So then he goes deeper, and then once he opens up the teeth, oh my God, I think this is really, it's got a root canal. So what I'm trying to say is, we don't go to the root canal first. We start with the surface level. So here's what I'm saying. When we talk about Allah, we say there's a creator, He's one. And He's uniquely one. And we stop. Now the person says, well, I don't understand that. I don't believe that. That's when you bring in other stuff. So why am I saying that? Because once we learn these kind of things, how to share the message of Islam, it's like we want to throw the book at them. We want to take the whole knowledge and like, can I just dump everything on him now and he might become Muslim? That's not the point. I've watched some da'is, like even Sheikh Usman, I've watched him. He gave dawah under 2 minutes. And he's like, okay, well, how can you explain to me Islam in under 2 minutes? So I'm not saying for you that's going to be like the dawah and this is the way, but it's to say that, okay, just simply, there's a creator, he's one, he deserves to be worshipped, he sent us guidance, we believe, all the Anbiya were sent, Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Noah, and they all came with wahi, revelation, and we believe the Quran is the last and the final testament of Allah. You understand? And very quickly, the Prophet ﷺ wasn't a liar, wasn't deluded, speaking the truth. Here's what they said, da da da. Within 2 minutes, he gave dawah. Could be done that way. But the thing is, now someone says, well, I don't accept that. So obviously, then you go through one piece at a time. So that's why we're giving you different tool sets. So what I do in this, in here, is to just explain to God is one. Okay, what do you mean one? I said, look, if there were multiple principles in a school, there'd be conflict, right? So I'm using rational, intuitive things that people understand already in their life. If there was more than one prime minister, there would be conflict on that country, or a king. So these are things they understand. Then we build upon that. Make sense? So in the beginning, keep it simple. If it's needed, then inshallah, we can go into depth. So here's what I'm saying. To start with, what we want to do is we want to explain. So like someone says, okay, well, I don't understand what you mean by this. So here's when you go into a little bit more depth. So you start with, look, if I make this clicker, I don't turn into a clicker, right? So I ask questions, like for example, John is here. I say, John, if I make this clicker, I don't become the clicker. And does that make sense to you? Yeah? Okay, so what do we mean by that? Why don't I become the clicker? You see, what happens is in my conversations, I always ask the follow-up questions. And this is a very Quranic methodology. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, did you create the heavens? Did you create the earth? Rather, you're not certain, right? So Allah is not giving you answers. He's making us think. Like for example, there's an ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there's a bird who leaves its nest in the morning with the empty stomach, comes back with the belly full. Who's feeding it? Yeah, so you're supposed to, you know the answer by just thinking about it. So when I ask questions, and I know it's culturally relative, because I know my wife was telling me that some cultures don't like to be questioned. So be just mindful of that. But in the West here especially, people like to be questioned, right? They like to, they want their mind to be, engaged with them. So like I'll say, John, so I'm just giving you an example. I say, John, if I make the clicker, I don't become the clicker. Does that make sense to you? He goes, yes. But why do you think it's like that? I could left it at that, and I said, why do you think it's like that? He's like, I don't know. I was like, well, why though? What do you think? He's like, because you're not the clicker? Right? That's usually what he's going to say, right? Or the person. So I would say something like along the line, I would say, look, the reason I don't become the clicker, because me and the clicker are different. We're disconnected and disjointed. Me and the clicker are not same. The nature of me and the clicker is different. You understand? So what am I saying here? And where did we pull this out from? Did I just get it out of my head? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There's nothing like unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So the challenge with people in humanity at large, they think that in every worldview, they think God is part of creation, right? What do they mean? Like, let's say in Christianity, Jesus, for some people, for the Trinitarian, is God, and he's walking on the earth. For Hinduism, God comes down and manifests in creation in different ways. And even in Sikhism, you will see, for example, they believe that the Guru Granth is a divine book. Divine doesn't mean like divine. When we say Kalam Allah, speech of God, they don't mean it like that. They mean that the book itself is so divine that we have to put our head down to it. So what they're doing, they're mixing Allah's, divine nature with creation. So when we're saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, there's nothing like God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not share His divinity with anyone, okay? The creator does not become creation. That's the point. So, So did the universe create itself? No. Did the universe have a cause? Yes. So now the cause cannot become the creation, right? That's the point. Yesterday, somebody asked, who created God? So if somebody said yesterday, and I said, we'll discuss it tomorrow. Who created God? So how do we answer that? From the Islamic view. Yes, sister. I know you asked the question, but how do we answer it? Yes, sister. Yeah, the created can be the creator. Okay, good. Okay. So the created cannot be the creator. So then they ask themselves a natural question. Everything that begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist, so definitely must have had a cause. So now logically in their head, what are they saying? Well, who created the creator? Right? So how do we answer that from the Islamic view? Yes? Exactly. So what does that mean, eternal? But how did he become eternal? Astaghfirullah. As you know the hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, he says, if the shaitan comes to you, who made this, who made that, he will come to you and you say astaghfirullah. That just from Islamic paradigm, we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is uncreated. Mean Allah has no beginning, no end. Why? Because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says on the day of Qiyamah, everything will cease to exist and He will be there. Right? And He's Al-Qahar, He's Al-Awwal, He's the first, He's Al-Akhir, the last. So we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains to us in the Quran His attributes and He explains who He is. So it's not like we're using our aql to come up with these understandings. That God has no beginning, God has no end. Yes, we use English language to explain to people, to make it relative, but we're understanding this from what Allah has explained from the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay? Make sense? So here, yes. Yeah, you cannot have something eternal, you cannot have something infinite and be finite at the same time. Right? So here's what are we saying. Let me help you understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one unique agent. He's not like His creation. Remember, He's uniquely one. Because we're saying Allah is uniquely one, He's one unique agent that is not like His creation. So everything that begins to exist has a cause. Allah didn't begin to exist because He's uniquely one. He's not like His creation. He's not contingent on, dependent on anything. Everything is dependent and contingent on something. Like for example, I was giving this example here. If I wanted to lift this table, or let's say a really big table, and I can't lift this table, right? What would I do? I would ask someone for help, right? Allah doesn't need help, right? But if I ask help, let's say I want someone to, can you help me with this table? And this brother says, okay, in order for me to help you, I have to ask this person. And that person says, I want to ask this person. And this went around the whole room and then it kept going. And there was no ending. Will I ever lift this table? No. So someone has to give permission to this brother to give me a hand. You get what I'm saying? And then we'll lift it. But Allah is not in need of anyone. Allah is Al-Qahar. Right? He's not dependent and contingent on anything to help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like for example, in Hinduism, they believe in one God. By the way, if you don't know. They believe that God is one. And that's surprising to many people because they think, no, they believe in multiple gods. They're pantheists. But what they say is that God comes down to earth in different forms and different times, in different shapes. So sometimes He becomes a man, sometimes He becomes an elephant, but sometimes He becomes something else. You understand? We're not like disrespecting someone's tradition, just to kind of explain what their understanding of God is. In Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need to come down to creation. He controls the creation. He has from His irada and His qudra, with His will and His knowledge, He's in control over everything. Kulli shay'in qadir, right? He's power over everything. Okay? So, does that make sense, brother? Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask this one follow-up question.
Sure.
So if we're saying that you need something, you need a power, you need God, basically, who doesn't have a beginning, who doesn't have an end, to
Yeah.
basically put an end to this logical conundrum.
Yes.
Doesn't make any sense otherwise. But
Otherwise,
then,
it'll keep going forever. There'll be no ending.
right.
So
infinite-
nothing will
yeah.
begin.
Right. But then why can't you, instead of saying God was never had a beginning, why can't you say the universe never had a beginning or something like that?
You can, but we can't observe the universe, right? We can't see the universe in infinite past,
Right. Okay.
right? We can
'Cause
only
we-
see creation in the what we see now.
Right. And
Right?
we have evidence that there was a beginning, like the Big Bang or whatever.
Well, the
and then-
logical
yeah.
deduction is that everything
Yeah.
that begins to exist must have a cause. Like this
Right.
iPad began to exist has a cause.
Right.
My clicker had a beginning because it must have had a cause. This clicker is contingent and dependent on something else. Like, for example, the cat
Right.
needs food to survive. If there's no food, the cat will die.
Right.
So,
okay.
so everything in creation is dependent on something else. Allah is not dependent on anything.
Because we're saying he's outside of the okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, we're not even just saying it's outside. Of course, he's outside, but we're saying we can't understand. Allah is laysa kamithlihi shay. There's nothing like
Right.
Allah. We don't need to get into the how-ness.
Right. Okay, I think that.
Whether
makes
he's
sense.
outside, inside. We're not saying. We're saying the creator doesn't become creation. That's
Right.
it.
Right.
So simple argument. If I make the clicker, do I become the clicker? No. Why not? Because me and the clicker are distinct and disjointed. Me and the clicker are not the same. Me and the table are not the same. If I make the table, I don't turn into the table. The whole point we're trying to explain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never turns into his creation. Because he's distinct and disjointed. Yes, brother? It's off mic, sorry.
So let's say I'm talking to some Christians or Hindus, and they believe that God came down either through Jesus or through whatever other deities they have, and we say that God does not come down through creation. Can we explain
No, he didn't say he doesn't come down to creation.
does not become creation?
Yeah, that's all we're saying, because Allah does say he comes down on the last
Right,
third of the
right.
night. That'll cause you and challenge you. That's why with the how-ness of Allah, we don't ask.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So can we it makes sense from my perspective, but when I argue with when I talk to other people about that, and you say it's not part of God's attributes to become creation, and
Exactly.
can you kind of explain a little bit more about that thought process so I can explain that better to other people?
I have a question. Before I explain to them, I think we as Muslims need to understand. If I explain to you, I'm just showing you this for example. This banner is taller than me. Do you guys understand the concept of taller? Why do you understand the concept of taller? Because you can observe with your eyes, we've used words, language to give names. Short, tall, right? If I show you this thing is wider than me, you understand the concept by observing this is wide, this is thinner. You understand? We're using human language to explain something. We've given words and names to this. Yes? You follow me so far? Allah is laysa kamithlihi shay. There's nothing like Allah. Your eyes cannot observe God. Your eyes cannot understand infinite. Your eyes cannot understand wide, short. It understands what it knows. Like for example, I'll give you a simple example. When someone means to make a picture of an alien, well, how do they make a picture of an alien? Always either has a head, has eyes, has legs, arms. What do they use? They use what they see in the nature. Everything that's created is based on something they've observed. Even the planes didn't come out of thin air. They saw birds flying. They say, hey, if the birds can fly, why can't human beings fly? Do you understand? So when we're saying laysa kamithlihi shay, there's nothing like Allah. If you don't understand what Allah is, who Allah is, what Allah is, that means you understood the concept of Allah in Islam. You guys understand this point? One Sheikh explained this very powerfully. He says if you cannot understand God, then you actually understood the concept of God in Islam. Because the whole idea is that your life is to believe in the unseen. Allah is the most hidden and the most dahir, the more batin, right? The most You can observe by creation, there has to be a creator, but you can't understand what Allah is. That's the point. Does that make sense? Which is what? Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So the sister is saying one time a Hindu person gave her this argument that this is a philosophy that you cannot understand. Now here's the question. Islam is not a philosophy. Why? Because we have hard proof that the Quran is not a man-made book. It's something you can test, you can look, you can feel, you can touch, you can understand, you can do tatabbar, you can do tafakkur, you can challenge. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. Yes, brother. And if you could get that mic just for the sister, they might not be able to hear you. Is it on? Just leave the mic on for the next person if you don't mind. On? The green button should go on.
I just wanted to make the case that the fitra is, it makes a case for the oneness of Allah. It like without any arguments. Like if you look across the globe, you have tribes that are in the middle of the jungle.
Excellent.
Like every group of people, independent of each other, they were all born with that innate disposition.
Excellent.
To believe that there is one unified God, and only when they're older, their parents introduce things like these complex ideas.
Yes, excellent.
That God is like a trinity or
whatever it is.
Parts.
Hanuman or whatever, yeah. Do you guys understand that point? Huh? Yes. Yeah, the question here, brother. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I know we can go really deep. Tawheed, I can spend years just talking about this.
Assalamu alaikum.
So we're gonna, yeah,
it is based on the back on oneness of God. If someone asks that why we believe one God, like an analogy that is Canada and USA is different country running by different person and different rulings.
Excellent.
So universe is very big. So why it cannot be possible that
excellent.
Part of universe is one God, in another part of the universe is another God.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Can I just hold that question for a second? I want to just go back to the brother before we go to the next question. So the brother, mashallah, brought in a very good point. He was saying that it's innate, it's in your fitrah to believe in one God. I'll come back to your question in a minute. I just want to finish with that. We jumped a little bit, yeah? So here's the point. The point we're trying to make that it's a self-evident truth that the Creator is one. You know what that means? We are in temporal depth of time. Means if we go to China, if we say yes, did yesterday happen, what would China say? Someone in China would say yes. Living in the time is self-evident truth. You understand? In the same way, believing in a creator, it's a self-evident truth. It's something that's innate, like the brother is saying. Like if you go to the Amazon jungle, they believe in a higher being. You go to, like for example, the indigenous people in Africa, they'll believe in a higher being. You go to the natives here, they'll believe in a higher being. Now the brother is saying, but the other people now come with different details of what this being is. That's something that's taught. You guys understand the difference here? Yes, we'll talk about that in a minute, yeah? Because we're going to explain why the Quran is from Allah, why the Prophet is a prophet. That's what put the whole... Sure. Can you just hold on? I want to just go back to this brother for a second, because he asked. Yeah, if you can give the sisters the mic. Yeah. The people that are watching from Facebook cannot hear, so they have a question. The mic. Okay, so the brother had a question. Your question was again, sorry, I just wanted to finish that point. Yes? So your question was, can you say that again? Oh, yes, yes. Multiple creator contention. So the contention is, there's a car, and there are multiple people working together building a car. It's called the multiple creator contention. Means the argument that there's multiple creators. That's his question. If there's a creator here and there's a creator somewhere else taking care of that, why can't that happen? That's your question, right? Yes? Yeah. Yes, I got it. Excellent point. That's the point. So look, what we do is we take a simple example and we expand it out. Because human being cannot conceptualize big ideas, like massive ideas of the universe and the creation. We cannot understand them. So we have to break it down to a human understanding, and then we expand them out. You get the point? So what we're doing is we're taking a car analogy. We're saying there's a car and there's multiple people working in a car. It's a simple idea we as human beings can understand. Once we understand this idea, then we expand it out to everything else, like the creation, what you're asking. Make sense? So here's the question. There's a car, and there's multiple people working and fixing on this car, like multiple gods working together in your idea of different parts of the universe, gods working together. What's the challenge with that, brothers and sisters? Who can answer that question? So the question is, simple idea. There's a car. There's multiple people working on that car, and they built the car together. Can't be multiple gods that work together and build the car or build the universe? Why not? The sisters have more hands up than the brothers. Can somebody give the mic, please? Yeah, they have it, yeah. Is it on? Is the green light on? Just hold it and it'll turn green in your... Okay, bismillah. Tap it. No, nothing.
Testing.
Okay, let's go.
So it works.
Now.
So there would have to be one person in charge of that whole team in the end. Like, they're not all the manufacturer. There's going to be one guy on top, the team leader or whatever.
Okay.
He's going to be in charge of the car.
But why can't you have, like, I'm just giving an example, just a counter argument. Why can't, like in Islam, you have, angels that are working together, right? Because Allah has angels that do different tasks. In the same way, why can't these people have this master creator and there's lower gods on the underneath working with him? Why can't that happen?
Multiple people, they're not God. There's going to be one guy on top.
I got it.
He's going to be the God.
But they're saying, but why do you say that? But there's something more deeper I want to take it in from the Islamic lenses. Yeah. So what? I understand that. Yeah, but we got that. But here's what I want to... Somebody else. No, you already been in the last class. I'm sorry, this is a trap of the last class. Actually, let's give it to Adam here in the back. He has a mic. The brothers have a mic now.
Perfect.
Is it on, Adam? Is it green? What's up with the mics? Oh, 2 mics can be on at the same time. Can you turn that off? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, in terms of Allah, like being split into like multiple parts, if you have 3 parts of Allah, but they're exactly the same, they have the exact same mission, then they have all the same goals, the exact same mission and everything, then that means that they're not 3. It's the same. It's the same God. So you basically dissolve the whole idea of 3. But if you give them a different mission and different rules, then it's not the same God. You have 3 gods, and then when you have 3 gods, then that contradicts like the synchronization and the harmony of creation.
That's a great answer, Adam, and I thank you for that answer. But the question right now is completely different, and I'm going to. You have a very good, valid point. And then we'll talk about it in a second. But here's the point. And I'll get to your point in a second. The reason why, because I want to continue with this class. We don't need to give it this much detail. I'm being told next in the back. Here's the point. Allah has many names and attributes. And how, one of the reasons, why Allah sent wahi down to the Prophet ﷺ? One of the reasons that Allah sent wahi, kalamullah, speech of Allah, to the Prophet ﷺ is to introduce human beings who Allah is. Okay? That was one of the reasons. Right? Not only just guidance, we wanted to know who God is. To how to have a relationship with Him. What do we do with, how do we understand God? What does He want from us? So it was to explain who God is. So Allah has many names and attributes. So here's what I'm saying, just 2 points. One, every da'i in this room and anywhere if you're doing dawah, please, my humble advice, go learn names and attributes of Allah. This will help you in the dawah like no tomorrow. And there are many, many courses online. I'm not promoting one over the other, so you can decide which one is best for you. I did one with Sheikh Fadl Suleiman, beautiful names of Allah. Amazing, amazing courses out there that talk about names and attributes of Allah. I'm sure there's many that you guys probably know already. If not, search up or ask the Sheikh. Go take names of Allah. Why this is important in this part, the reason why Allah doesn't share His power with others is not only that, because Allah is Al-Qahhar. What does that mean? He's the subduer. Like for example, in the multiple car contention, multiple people have to work together to make a car. God doesn't need anyone to build a car. Why? Because He says, kun fayakun. He says it and it is. He doesn't need anything. He doesn't need angels. He doesn't need humans. He doesn't need anything in creation. He's self-sufficient. He's al-ghani, independent. That's the point. You guys understand? He's the subduer. He doesn't need. So, yes, someone can say there's multiple gods. So back to your answer, that this part of the world, this God is controlling, and this part of the world, this God is controlling, right? Do you understand or no? Okay, this universe and another universe. So here. Excellent. So there's, yeah. Yeah, the mic. Adam has one. Here, just give it to the Sheikh.
So I give an analogy like that. USA, it is ruled by another government. So Canada is ruled by another government. So there is no conflict. So universe is very weak. So we are part of one universe. So there is no conflict because it is ruled by one Allah. But part of the universe, another part may be another Allah. Or another way I can say, it's a dynasty of Allah.
We got it.
Same question.
It's clear. We got the understanding. We got it from the beginning.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's Allah's dynasty. Maybe now one Allah is ruling this world. Maybe for 1 billion years. Next 1 billion years, maybe his son or someone.
We got it. Jazakallah khair. And I think we need to move forward from this. Otherwise, we'll be here all day, guys. This will be the last thing, okay?
So all of that, like, misconceptions, it comes when you disconnect the concept of God from the Creator. Okay? Always, when you say that God is a creator. Now, Pharaoh, he claimed that he's God. But he never claimed that he is the maker, the design, the creator. He never claimed something like this. The only one that, truly, that he claimed that he is the creator and he is, the sustainer, and he proved that, and we know that we can prove for clearly that he's the one. Now, when you disconnect that concept of the creator from God, and you think God is just a superpower and he's not the creator,
yes,
we're going to come with all of this misunderstanding about this. Okay, so the creator is one. Okay, before, so you're talking about, numbers of God or multiple gods. So you have to prove that there are multiple creators. No, it is only one creator, and the creator, the one, he is there, as a power that controlling his creation. So it is very important to link the concept of God with the attributes of God. So when there's no point I say, there's multiple ones. Okay. But are they creators? They're not, then they are not gods. So they're not even, disconnect the concept of God from the creator. You get the point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Okay, let's, this is like a dead horse, by the way. We're going to just smash this. Yeah, and this is why studying Islam is very important. Inshallah. But there's 60, 70 people here. By the time we get rid of it, we'll just be talking about it. I've been studying Tawheed now for at least 3 or 4 years. Okay? So you can imagine how much depth we go into this. So, yeah, that's a challenge from Allah. Allah says no one can even create a fly. And fly is such a simple thing. Someone can say, I can make a mechanical fly. But that mechanical fly can't self-sustain. That mechanical fly is dependent or contingent on something else. That mechanical fly cannot reproduce and then be self-sustaining.
There's one thing, there's some misconception we're throwing, and I think I cannot let it go without a little bit explanation.
Sure.
So when the brother mentioned that we can assume that the universe is eternal, you know, you remember?
Back.
Yes. That cannot be, because when you say eternal, that means has no beginning and has no end. Okay? So do not forget that. Yes, you might think the universe has no beginning, okay? But that question has an end. Yes, we see the change and ending in many of the part of the universe, and that's not same. You know, even 100 years back. You know, it's not. Let alone that millions years back. So being proven scientifically that part of the universe was not exist.
Yeah.
And now it exists, and some that were exist and now not exist. So it has an end, and anything has an end. This is that mean has a beginning. So they are not eternal. So this is cannot be assuming all of the things here that it might be has no start. No, it has a start. If it thinks has an end, has a start, and that's why the definition is incomplete when you say just the internal that has no beginning. No, has no beginning and has no end. That's why Allah, He's al-awwal and al-akhir.
Yes. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Allah bless you. Make sense? Okay. So, let's explain who God is to the people in the concept of Islamic understanding, which is what? Let's define this. And this is all in your notes. And if you don't have them, please reach out to the admin. She'll give you. And if you want to just take this picture for yourself, you can do that with your phone. So keep it handy. One of the things I used to do with these slides, I used to keep them in my phone just to kind of look at them and say, okay, so I can just talk about the main points. So when you look at the creation is needy. Allah is Al-Ghani, right? Everything in creation is temporary, like the Sheikh is saying. Everything that we have is going to end. It will have an ending. If it has an ending, it must have had a beginning. So everything is temporary. Allah is As-Samad, He's eternal, right? Everything we have in creation is confined by space and time. Allah is free of space and time, okay? He's not contingent and dependent on, we cannot, you do that to Allah, right? Allah is uniquely one. Make sense? So, one of the things I want you to just understand, and I'm not saying for you to be rude, okay? That's not what I'm asking you to do. What I'm trying to explain to you, when it comes to oneness of Allah, we do not want to, with due respect, we don't want to understand their understanding of oneness. The reason why you guys are falling into conflict, even yourself, brother, and the sister here, is because they're coming and giving you an idea who God is. You understand? If someone comes to you, well, okay, well, you understand it this way. Well, let me explain it to you this way. I understand it this way. What's he using to understand? He's using his own aql. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reason He sent wahi down, so you don't have to use to aql understand who God is. He's explaining to you who He is. So Allah is Al-Ghani, independent. Allah is As-Samad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Awwal, Al-Akhir. These names and attributes, who explains Allah is Al-Qahar, the subduer. He doesn't need anyone, right? We need to tell them this. With all due respect, with not being disrespectful to them, like, I don't want to know what your understanding of God is. I don't want to know how you came up with the idea of what God is. We don't want to know. Why? Because if you knew who God was, you'd be a Muslim. Right? Anyway. So, now, based on yesterday what we discussed, we discussed some elements. Thank you for asking that question. In order for you to understand what we're talking about, you have a few minutes. So we did that part. Then we talked about the premise of initiation, beginning. The next part we discussed that do you believe in God? Do you believe in a creator? Do you believe in first cause? And we did that yesterday, right? At this stage of where we are, you're not going to go backwards, you're moving forward, okay? Means we're not discussing premises, we're discussing, obviously we learn from those things, so thank you very much. Thank you for asking that question. In order for you to understand the question, let me explain some foundations of Islam, and then you're moving forward, and then you're adding this part now. The person says, okay, I believe there has to be some energy, some force, something that has a beginning, right? All powerful, whatever. Now you're explaining what this being is. Okay? So we're going to do a role play with each one of you. So should I explain to you how to kind of play this out first, just to make it easy? One of the brothers can come up. I'll get the brother with the black hat. Yes. Yeah. Get the mic. So we're not getting into contentions, no argument. We're just discussing. So this person, whoever this person would be, let's say it's Michael or David or whatever, he's actually genuinely concerned to know. Like he's not there to debate and argue. He just wants to know, okay, I want to understand. Okay. So let's say you're speaking to John, right? So we're just making that example to show people how would we speak to John. So if John comes and says, hey John, thank you for asking all these questions. It was lovely chatting with you. So based on what we discussed just a little while ago, you agree that there's some kind of something out there. You make sense? So what we're saying is we're defining what this being is, right? Based on what we understand that, if there's a being out there, this being, what we understand from the Islamic worldview is Al-Awwal, the first, Al-Akhir, the last. Allah is not dependent on anything. Everything that begins to exist must be depending on something. Allah is Al-Ghani, right? He's self-sufficient. And we have a principle in Islam, John, is laysa kamithlihi shay. There's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense to you?
Sort of.
Okay, so let me define who God is. So in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, if you want to understand who God is, by explaining Surah Al-Ikhlas. It's one of the chapters in the Quran. It says, Qul huwallahu ahad. Means, Allah is one, uniquely one. Allahu samad. He's self-sufficient. He's not dependent on anything, right? وَلَمْ يَكُلْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ. Nothing has begotten Allah, and Allah didn't beget anything, right? وَلَمْ يَكُلْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Means there's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Excellent. So that's what we believe God, who He is, He's one. Okay?
Yeah,
Thank you very
understood.
much. It's very simple. Yeah? It is simple. It's just, remember what we said? Practice. The more you practice, what I said yesterday, we as Muslims don't speak about Islam as much, so it's now becoming natural. So it's just doing something over and over, right? Okay? So these are the three, the premises here, right? And you get an agreement at the end. Okay? Okay, so yeah, everybody rise, pair up in twos, inshallah, and then I will be coming across and listening into your conversations to see if there's something that needs to be tweaked. Inshallah. Sheikh, you want to just listen in with some people too? If you could just listen what they're saying, because then you can help them. That's what I do. Inshallah. Check, check, check. All right. Check 1, 2. All right. Brothers and sisters, excellent. You guys are doing great job. Wallahi, I'm listening to many conversations. MashaAllah, you guys are doing excellent work. May Allah bless you. Listen, wallahi, if you just guys are trying, that already you guys are doing a great job. Because the challenge with Muslims is we're not even trying sometimes, right? So you trying, making that effort, this is already, wallahi, it's, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it on your hasanat as an amazing effort. So, what we're going to do is we're going to do a small break for coffee, tea, and then inshallah we'll come back and then we'll continue inshallah. Go ahead, Sheikh.
So just a second before we start the break, okay? It's mashallah, the material are really rich, and it need like a lengthy discussion. But just because of the time, we are limited, so that's why we maybe there is no much chance to answer all your questions and take it longer. But inshallah, we'll have a session at the end, to have your question answer, and even we're gonna have another follow-up, training bid'illah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's one thing, I want to say, like as now we are halfway explaining the Gura. Okay, when you discuss with somebody, especially that person get convinced that God is one, you should celebrate that moment. Do not miss that point. If you said, or like let's say you're talking to him, the main pillar of Islam to believe in the oneness of God, and he said, what, I agree. And when he asked him, does that make sense for you? He said, yes. So then that's a great, and then give him like the clear reward, as Rasulullah mentioned, that the person will come in a day for judgment, that he has a 99 folder full of sins, and one plate or tablet was written, no true God but Allah, and he believed in the oneness of God, that they put all of those 99 folder in a special scale in one side, and the La ilaha illallah, the kalim, another side, so the 99 folder flow has no weight, and that person be saved by that kalima, the no true God but Allah. So you make that person happy, want to continue listening to you, and that's really important, because the person come to that point, that's something great. So do not let it go without really bringing joy to the heart of that person, and make him happy with this. Ajib.
I get happy just listening to the Sheikh. Wallahi, this is so beautiful, because what he did just now, and this is why they're the Mashayikhs and we're the students, yeah? That what he did is he linked spirituality, right? It's not just, it's a rational argument believing in one God. He linked it with what? That one small little thing will come on the day of Qiyamah of this statement, La ilaha illallah, be heavier than anything else. This is such a huge thing. So Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I benefit from you as well, so may Allah bless you. So yeah, we'll take just a 10-minute break. They already started, okay. So 5 minutes, yeah, inshallah, 5 minutes. It's 11:45, we'll go to 11:50. If somebody didn't get coffee, tea, please grab yourself and just come on back, inshallah. Yes, sister, sure. You can just turn off the mic.